We're keeping a close eye on what's happening right down the street from here, with votes and talks on raising the debt ceiling. And here we are, one day closer to doomsday. In fact, 4 days, 6 hours, 58 minutes, and 35 seconds away. Now, we have reached a better place, a place where this bitter divide over party politics has come to a head. With the clock, look at it, it continues to tick down. So here's a question. Do desperate times call for desperate measures? Well, earlier I spoke to Peter Schiff. He's president of Euro-Pacific Capital. He also ran for Congress in 2010, and I asked him what he would be doing if he was in Washington right now calling the shots. Here's his response.
Well, I don't think we should raise the debt ceiling. It is a charade. For now, it's true. Default is up to us. If we want to default, obviously we can do it. But if we don't want to, there's plenty of revenue. At some point, that won't be the case. When interest rates rise, then we simply won't be able to make the payments. But for now, with interest rates as low as they are, it's still our choice. Eventually, it's not going to be. But for now, it is. But the real problem is not the debt ceiling. The problem is the debt. And raising the ceiling makes that problem bigger.
It seems to me like you're saying in some elements that deficit spending needs to be stopped dead in its tracks, period. But here's the deal.
That's the only way to stop it. Remember, Congress has promised for years to reduce spending in the future, but it never happens. It's just like everybody has a friend that's constantly promising to go on a diet and lose weight, but it's always next week. If you're serious about losing weight, you don't with junk food.
Yeah, but you also don't starve the person. You don't starve the person and keep them away from food for several months. If that happens, I think if we stop deficit spending in its tracks, there could be some serious repercussions. People who rely on Social Security, on Medicare, on food stamps, they will be out of luck. It sounds to me very much, Peter, like this is survival of the fittest. So, make the case for me that you're not saying that we're going to toss all the poor people, the hungry people, the disabled, to fend for themselves.
Well, remember, one of the reasons that there's so many poor people and so many unemployed people is because of the government, because of all the resources the government is draining out of the private sector. So if the government actually stopped spending all this money, we'd have a stronger, more productive economy. And so we wouldn't have as many poor people, we wouldn't have as many unemployed people. But who's talking about starving? The government is still collecting over $2 trillion a year in taxes. That's plenty of money. That's all the government was spending around 10 or 12 years ago. So who's talking about starving the government? I just think they're a glutton. They're totally, way overweight. They need to come down and just eat a reasonable diet. And I think the tax revenues that they already collect is plenty. In fact, if we can cut enough out of the budget, maybe we can have some tax relief, because I think Americans are overtaxed. And putting this government deeper into debt, which means we're forcing even higher taxes on the American public in the future, that is not the way to solve these problems.
But the fact is, Peter, I think a lot of people would be offended at this statement that there's so much gluttony going on. Certainly not about the government. A lot of people would probably agree with you. But let's talk about who these entitlement programs actually affect, who that money trickles down to. These are people who maybe, you're right, maybe in the long term, and I don't think this is a totally invalid argument, that in the long term, if you have people stop relying on the government, maybe it will make them more apt to go out and do stuff, some people for themselves. But the fact is, this is also a right now problem as to what happens, with these programs and with this money. If these people stop getting these checks in the mail, there could be some serious issues. In a way, this is shock therapy, a treatment that, it doesn't kill you, but it's very painful. So,
well, maybe you can make the analogy to rehab. Yes, if you stop taking drugs and go through withdrawal, there is some pain there, but there's a lot of reward as a result. The problem is, if you keep doing drugs because you don't want rehab, you end up dying of an overdose. And that's what's going to happen to the U.S. economy. Yes, it's unfortunate that a lot of people relied on promises from politicians that can't be kept. But the problem is to try to sustain the lies. That's what's going to destroy the country. The first step is admitting that our politicians lied and overpromised, and let's deal with today's reality. The money is not there, and we can't keep borrowing it. We can't keep printing it. We need to deal with reality.
I think it's a valid point, Peter, seriously, but rehab is different than throwing these people to the streets with nobody to help them. And by the way, some people can't afford rehab and need help for it.
No, obviously when the government is figuring out where to cut the spending, they don't need to throw anybody to the streets. You know, there are plenty of people who are collecting Social Security checks right now that are pretty rich, that are pretty well off. They use their Social Security money to pay the dues at their country clubs. They don't need that money. Yes, are there people that if you took away their Social Security, they would be out in the street? Yes. So let's not take it away from those people. But there are plenty of people who do not need that money. And the taxes are being taken from younger people who are struggling to get by, who are paying a lot more in Social Security payroll taxes than they are in income taxes. We don't want to raise taxes on them. If you've got wealthy people that have a decent net worth, they don't need that Social Security check.
But wouldn't you say, I mean, just at least to a small extent, that your argument is very Darwinian, it's very survival of the fittest, and the people at the bottom are really the ones who lose out and have less of a chance even than they have now of ever recovering from this?
People are already losing out. Look at the cost of living. Look at the disparity now between the richest and the poorest. That's a result of these policies. That's a result of central planning and central banking that bleeds Main Street and feeds Wall Street. That has to come to an end, and it's not going to come to an end if we keep on running up these deficits. And all the employment opportunities that are being destroyed by big government, who does that hurt? Much. It hurts people, the poor, who are trying to work their way up the ladder, and the government has taken the ladder beyond their reach.
All right, certainly a different way of looking at it. In some ways, you can almost interpret what you just said as robbing from the rich, Wall Street, to help the others, but not totally. Peter Schiff, I want to thank you so much, as always, for being on, president of Euro-Pacific Capital in Westport.
Hello everyone, welcome to Global Government News. Today is Friday, July 29th, 2011, and I'm Darko. My website is www.ggnonline.com, and that's ggnonline.com, and ddarko2012 is my YouTube channel. Thank you for joining me, everyone. Most, if not all, the links for these articles will be posted, and I had a poll here, and I was just going to ask my viewers here if you've had any problems viewing the results of this poll. It's not coming up, so I don't know if it's an add-on or flash play or update or something. But I was just wondering if you guys can actually see the poll. So, otherwise, you can go down here to Network Blogs all the way at the bottom. Click that Follow This Blog button. You can follow me through that. And starting off with the economy here, of course, the big news is raising the debt ceiling, and we'll obviously get to that towards the end because I think it's a lot of it is a charade, and then that's why I like that video by Peter Schiff, because I saw that that word that he used, that description for it, after I was already thinking of it. So it just described it perfectly. It's a big charade. So I'll save that junk garbage for the end of this video. Wall Street ends worst week and year on debt stalemate. Stocks ended in the worst week in a year as time runs out as Washington reached agreement before the government loses its ability to borrow money. And Wall Street's a big sham, scam, rigged market. It's full of speculation, no real hard long-term investment. And so, you know, I could care less about them. China's stocks slightly down Thursday. China's stocks closed slightly lower Thursday with the benchmark Shanghai Composite Index down 0.54%. Moving on here, we have the Japanese market. It says Nikkei extends losses on stalled U.S. debt talks, and downbeat says here Tokyo stocks extended losses Friday with the Nikkei stocks index losing 0.69% to a 4-week closing low as lawmakers in the U.S. remain basically blah blah blah. So you know, just more scare mongering, and that's all. Not all you're going to see in this video, but a lot of the news pertaining to the debt ceiling and markets is going to basically be based off scare mongering. So it says here, savers desert the stock market. Savers are abandoning the stock market as a rate not seen since the financial crisis of 2008 amid fears that another global recession is looming. Oh, another one. That means that that we've actually had growth. Real growth. I don't think we have, and the jobs really haven't picking up either, but it's a jobless recovery, so maybe it has. Treasury yields, stocks fall on debt, GDP, and says Treasuries rallied, sending yields on a 10-year notes to the lowest level since November. And then moving on to commodities, we have here Brent crude at $116, down almost 51 cents, along with gas oil futures, heating oil futures down $1.50. And a lot of this stuff is down in commodities. It says here that the biggest ones that are down are corn and cocoa, followed by wheat futures and soy. Moving down to precious metals, copper futures at $447, and it was up $1. It says here that gold was up $15, trading at $1,631.20. Silver at $40, up about 30 cents. Oil falls, capping weekly decline on, you guessed it, U.S. debt ceiling dispute. It says here, Citi's top economist says the water market will soon eclipse oil. I expect to see the near future of massive expansion of investment in water sector, which GE has the desalinization technology already, including the production of fresh, clean water from sources. Desalinization, oh, go figure. Storage, shipping, and transportation of water. So there you go. Water wars, that's right. Eurozone inflation dips to 2.5% in July, and then cost of beer, spirits, and cigarettes to rise. It says here beer and cigarettes up as taxes kick in. Automatic tax rise takes effect Monday. Smokers will pay 16 cents, 34 cents more tax for packet of cigarettes from Monday. They call it what? Oh, a sin tax. It's a sin tax. Well, it could be considered a sin to be taking pharmaceutical drugs and going to a hospital to the drug dealer and getting them. That can be considered a sin too, can it? Maybe we should charge more and tax that. Theft is on the rise in a worsening economy. So stealing cars and all sorts of stuff. It says here storm drain covers, grapes, ambulances, painkillers, and even bees. House prices inch higher as average cost hits £168,000. That's in the UK. Home values fall further in June. It says basically Data-Rismark value index reveals, and it says capital city home prices have fallen by 2% over the past year, led by big falls in Brisbane and Perth. That's in Australia, if you didn't know. Homeownership falls to lowest since 1998. U.S. home ownership rate fell to the lowest level since 1998 in the second quarter as stricter lending standards block purchases and foreclosures force people out of their residences. Mortgages hold steady. That's in the U.S. Little change. And Bank of America donates and demolishes houses to cut glut of foreclosures. They faced with a glut of foreclosed and abandoned houses it can sell, has a new tool to get rid of the most decrepit ones, a bulldozer. So they'll donate 100 foreclosed homes in Cleveland area and in some cases contribute to their demolition. So there you go. Get them off the books. Quick news. Bank of America sued over fraud allegations. The biggest lender faces new security frauds lawsuit by former Countrywide Financial Corp investors, including BlackRock, that opted out of $624 million settlement last year. Alabama County ready for possible record bankruptcy, and data shows deeper recession, sharper slowdown. The Great Recession, or the Great Takeover by the bankers. USC's weakest post-recession growth. More news on that. Economy slowed sharply in the first half of the year at a meager rate of 1.3% annual rate. So pretty much still in a recession. Economy shrank in May. Stats Canada says for Canada said it unexpectedly shrank. So it unexpectedly shrank. I pretty much been saying that it was going to keep doing that for the past year, so it wasn't unexpected to me and many listeners. It says green agenda has parallels with excesses of communism. So in a serendipitous coincidence of timing, in the space of 2 hours this week, Australians were afforded a sharp momentary insight into the two opposing ideological mindsets that are competing for the souls of our nation. Where Czech President Klaus, an economist who fought against communism, was warning of the new threats to our freedom he recognizes in the doctrine of global warming. New NASA data blow gaping hole into global warming alarmism, basically saying the atmosphere is allowing far more heat to be released into space than the alarmist computer models have predicted. So check that out. World population hits 7 billion after boom in developing world. So get out your vaccinations. There's too many people. We got to start killing. Don't worry about how we're going to do it. UK launches woodland carbon code. And then next up we have emissions fraud police necessary, says government. So Abbott out of Australia criticizes government's carbon cops, saying a draconian new police force, that's what it is. Then China's carbon intensity to be cut by 17% by 2015. Then the NHS in the UK, their health service, delays operations, quote, as it waits for patients to die or go private. New high, 46% think most in Congress are corrupt. You ready for the scaremongering? Obama to banks, we're not defaulting. Obama urges capitulation, Congress set to vote. Then failure will be inexcusable, says Barrio Sotoro. U.S. debt crisis, U.S. inches towards catastrophic default. Read, extremists have locked down the Congress. So anyone that's against the this two-party system is extremist. World Bank head, U.S. playing with fire, U.S. default closer as vote is called off. And it's really about this super Congress. Thank you.